uh, Virgo, there's a specific kind of quiet that finds you when the story finally makes sense. Not a good quiet, not a peaceful one. The kind that settles over you when the last piece lands and you realize you already knew all of it. You just didn't have the words for it yet. Maybe tonight is when the words arrive. You lost someone or something that felt like someone or the version of someone you believed they were capable of being. The version you could almost see, almost touch, almost hold steady long enough to become real. And then something happened. Not gradually, not through the slow erosion of two people growing apart, but suddenly, or suddenly enough, in the way that certain losses happen, with a speed that doesn't match the weight of what's being lost. And there was someone else involved. There's almost always someone else involved in the losses that sting this particular way. Not just another person, but a specific kind of person, the kind that moves through other people's lives, like a weather event, loud, consuming, filling every available space with an intensity that reads, at first, like passion, like aliveness, like something that ordinary, stable things can't quite compete with. At first, and the person you lost, your person, got close to that, got pulled into that particular orbit, and something in them, some part that was hungry for something you maybe couldn't see, they were hungry for, responded. Not because you weren't enough. That's important to say slowly. Not because you weren't enough, but because something in them was looking for a specific kind of feeling, the feeling that chaos sometimes generates, that you, in your realness, in your steadiness, in your genuine, unperformed presence, didn't produce, couldn't produce. Not because you lacked something, but because you weren't performing. And that's the thing that's hardest to sit with. The part that loops, the part that comes back at 2 a.m. and asks, was I boring? Was I too safe? Was I too real? Too present? Too honest? Was the very thing I thought was my strength. The fact that I didn't play games, didn't manufacture drama, didn't create chaos to seem more interesting. Was that the thing that made me easier to leave? And the answer, the honest, complicated answer, is maybe for them, in that moment, with where they were in themselves, maybe yes. Maybe the stability you offered was something they didn't know how to value yet. Maybe the consistency, the quiet, reliable, unglamorous consistency felt less like love and more like background. The thing that's always there, the thing you don't reach for urgently because you assume it'll still be there later. And the chaos, the messy, consuming destabilizing chaos of this other person felt urgent, felt like it required immediate attention, like it was alive in a way that demanded response, and something in them, the part that confused urgency with importance, responded to the demand, moved toward it, left the background for the foreground, left you, the real, steady, genuinely present you, for something louder. And you felt it when it happened. Didn't you? You felt the shift before you could name it. In the texture of things, in the way their attention, which had been yours, started to feel divided, distracted, pointed slightly elsewhere, and you probably did what you do. You gave more. You tried to fill the gap. You showed up more fully, more generously, more honestly, because that's what you know how to do. That's what love looks like to you. You give more of the real thing when things feel uncertain. But the real thing, more of it, wasn't what was being looked for anymore. And that specific moment of giving more of yourself to someone who was already turning away. That might be the image that still visits you sometimes, not with bitterness necessarily, but with a particular kind of ache that's hard to describe and harder to release. Because what you lost, let's be precise about this, wasn't just them. It was the version of yourself that existed in relation to them. The you that was chosen, the you that was seen by this specific person in this specific way. That version, the one that existed in their eyes, ended when they turned away. And you've been grieving both the person and the version of yourself that only existed in the light of their attention. And now, with time, with distance, with the particular clarity that only arrives after the fog lifts, you can see it more fully. What actually happened, not the story you told yourself in the beginning. The one where maybe you did something wrong, where maybe you could have been different, where maybe if you just done something differently, it would have gone another way. Not that story. The actual one. Someone got pulled toward chaos, and you paid the price for it. And there's a particular kind of injustice in that, one that doesn't resolve cleanly, because the thing that was your strength was used against you. Your realness made you replaceable to someone who needed drama to feel alive. Your stability made you easier to take for granted than the instability that kept them anxious and therefore, in some confused, painful way, engaged. Your honesty made you less compelling than the performance of someone who knew exactly how to manufacture need, and that's genuinely unfair. It's worth saying that clearly, without softening it, without the reflexive move to find your part in it, which you've probably already done extensively, or to be philosophical about it, before you've actually felt it. It was unfair. You were the real thing, and the real thing lost to something louder and less true. And that is, regardless of what comes after, worth grieving without explanation, without lessons attached, just worth grieving. Now, here's where it shifts. Not into comfort, not yet, but into something more complicated, something worth looking at carefully. The person who left your person is living something right now. You don't know exactly what, but you probably have a sense of it, a sense of what chaos looks like. Once the initial intensity fades, once the drama that felt like passion starts to feel like just drama. Once the consuming intensity that seemed like aliveness starts to cost more than it gives, once the manufactured need that kept them anxiously engaged starts to exhaust them in ways they didn't anticipate. Because chaos has a pattern, a very reliable, very consistent pattern. It peaks, and then it costs. And the cost, when it comes, is proportional to how high the peak was. And your person, wherever they are, whatever they're living, is somewhere in that arc right now. Either still in the peak, still in the intensity, still in the pull, or beginning to feel the cost, beginning to understand in the specific embodied way you only understand things by living them. What they traded away, what was real, what wasn't. And that realization, if it hasn't come yet, probably will, not as punishment, not as justice. The universe doesn't work in straight lines like that. But just as the natural consequence of choosing chaos over consistency, of choosing performance over presence, of choosing the thing that felt urgent over the thing that was real. And here's what's worth asking carefully, honestly, about what happens when that realization comes. When they look back, when the fog of intensity clears and they can see, maybe for the first time with real clarity, what they had, what you were, what the real thing felt like before they confused louder for better. What do you want to happen then? That's not a simple question. Don't answer it quickly. Sit with it. Because there are several honest answers, and they might all be true at the same time. There's the part of you that wants them to feel it, to understand what they lost, to carry that understanding in the particular permanent way that certain losses get carried. That's real. That's human. That's not something to be ashamed of. And then there's another part, quieter, maybe harder to admit, the part that's still somewhere underneath everything, cares about them, not in a way that wants them back necessarily, but in the way you care about someone, you genuinely saw someone you were real with, someone who for a time was the person you chose. That care doesn't disappear cleanly. It just changes shape, becomes something quieter, something that sits alongside the grief without canceling it twice. And both of those are allowed. The wanting them to understand what they lost, and the quiet, complicated caring, both at the same time, without having to resolve them into one clean feeling. Because real feelings, the ones that come from real connections, don't resolve cleanly. That's how you know they were real. But here's the thing that matters most, that this whole situation is pointing toward, not them, not what they're feeling, not whether they'll realize, not whether they'll come back, but you, what this revealed about you, what this confirmed. You were the real thing. In a situation that rewarded performance, you were real. In a dynamic that gave attention to chaos, you were steady. In a moment that valued urgency, you offered something that required patience to appreciate, and you lost. In that specific context, with that specific person, at that specific moment in their story, but the realness, the steadiness, the genuine presence, that didn't lose, that's still here, that's still yours, unchanged by what happened, unchanged by the fact that someone, in their confusion, in their hunger for something loud, couldn't see the value of it. The value of you doesn't change because someone failed to recognize it. That's not how value works. That's not how you work. Twice. And the person who comes next, if there is a next, when there is a next, will be someone who can see it, not because they're perfect, not because the connection will be without difficulty, but because there'll be someone who doesn't need chaos to feel alive. Someone who recognizes steadiness, not as background, not as the thing that's always there, but as the rarest thing, the thing most worth holding on to, the thing most worth choosing again every day, even when nothing is dramatic, even when nothing is loud, even when it's just real, quietly, genuinely real. And you, the you that was real through all of this, you're still here. On the other side of the loss, on the other side of the confusion, on the other side of the question of whether you were enough, you were enough. You were always enough. The problem was never you. It was never you. And somewhere in the quietest, most honest part of you, you already knew that. You just needed to hear it out loud, in the dark, where the real things get said, where you finally get to believe them.